Hello, everyone, and welcome on into a Sweet 16 preview. Myself, Joe Tansey, with Ryan Coyle and Mark Henry Jr. All of our college basketball coverage here on The Gambler in the month of March is brought to you by AAA. Be ready, get AAA. Gentlemen, we've had a few days now to kind of detox from from the first weekend of the tournament, and now it's set up for what I think is going to be an elite weekend of games between the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight. Uh, let's just start from there, from a broad perspective. How excited are you guys that chalk, for the most part, held, and we get a lot of really, really good matchups over the next 4 days?
Yeah, just awesome games on the board. I mean, I think you can look at every single matchup, and I think you could make a compelling argument for either side to win the game. And I don't really think you look at any of these matchups and you're like, wow, that one is a surefire blowout. So when you don't get all those crazy Cinderella teams and the extra upsets, maybe just get that first round upset out of the way, and then second round you go back to the chalk. That I think makes for better product now and gives us some better games, which at the end of the day, that's what the people want to see. So really excited, and should be a fun 4-day stretch here as we get ready for the Final Four next week.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. I kind of love how the tournament was. There was some chaos in round one. I think we got enough chaos to keep us occupied in round one, and then round two held. So now we get some fun matchups this weekend, no matter what. I mean, I know I was talking with Beef on Twitter where he put out like imagine the Elite Eight is these ones versus twos basically, and I was like, what about this matchup and this matchup? And then like to me, it's almost like it's choose your own adventure. Like there's so many fun potential Elite Eight, Final Four, matchups that we could cook up.
Yeah, and I think that's the fun part about it is when you look at these matchups the next 2 days, tonight specifically. I mean, you have the number one offense in Illinois versus the number one defense in Iowa State. You have a national championship rematch between UConn and San Diego State. You got two name brands. You got North Carolina. You got Alabama, and then Clemson, who I guess can be considered the Cinderella of the tournament, along with NC State. But they're still an ACC team. They're still a name brand going up against an Arizona team that has a long history in college basketball. So I think there's a little bit for everyone here in these games.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know if it was my bad choices up in the gambling cave, but I felt like crap all week. And then I woke up today and I was like, all right, I'm back. So really excited. And like you said, Joe, the history, the compelling matchups. I mean, maybe a couple like Kentucky or like a Villanova would make it a little bit more of a blue blood kind of thing. But you got all your big dogs for the most part. It's going to be an awesome 4-day stretch.
So let's dive on into the games. The first one, the weird scheduling quirk of March Madness, being Clemson and Arizona first up, but the game's being played in LA. I saw Brad Vonell out there on the streets earlier this week saying that the way his team traveled, where were they to start the?
I'm so bad at that.
Yeah.
I'm the worst at that.
Because they were in what, Baylor's
Spokane,
bracket?
I think maybe.
I want to. They were somewhere not close to South Carolina, so they ended up having a lot of travel back and forth, and now going out to Los Angeles to take on Arizona. I didn't even consider that within my handicap before taking the under in this game. I think it's going to be I don't see a path where both teams get to a high point total, but let's start there. Clemson's hung their hat on defense the last few games. Arizona, we know offense probably dictates things, but they can play some pretty good defense, and the matchups may go their way tonight. So how do we see Clemson versus Arizona playing out?
You go first, Mark.
I'm big on Zona here. As you guys know, I've been really high on Zona all year long. They are my pick to win it as of right now. If I was making my prediction, not UConn's, I think obviously the most obvious one, but outside of UConn, it would be Arizona. And I'm not trying to take everything away from Clemson from their run. In fact, I as you guys know, I bet pretty heavily on Clemson last week when they beat Baylor. But ultimately, I think that win and getting to the Sweet 16 had a lot more to do with matchups, and they beat the numbers 86 defense in Bartorvik with Baylor in a game that Baylor shot 38% from the field, 86%. Well, that would have been great. 38%.
That's what Kansas did against Samford for the first 12 minutes.
Yeah, 38% from the field, 6 for 24 from 3 in a game that they missed 10 free throws. Like, that was the story of that game to me. The shot quality score, if you're a nerd like us, Clemson actually should have lost that game by 9 if you look at that shot quality score. So, but one of the main things here is, like, Clemson only took 17 threes against Baylor. They only took 20 against New Mexico. I know against New Mexico they were kind of up pretty convincingly the whole game, so that I'm not looking at that one quite as much. I just don't think Clemson's like Brad Brunell skidball style. I just hate the way Clemson plays. I always have. I'm not a big Brad Brunell guy. It's not even that Arizona shoots a gazillion threes and they're going to outshoot them from that. Although they shot 35 in round 1. But it's more about just how fast they get rolling in transition. Like, I feel like there's been so many games that we've watched Arizona where they're up 2, they're up 4, and then, oh, wait, like 2 minutes later, they're up 14. Like, it can just happen really, really fast with Arizona. And one last thing, like, I talked about this on the Daily Ticket. I'm ready to say this after probably watching, like, I don't know, probably 10-ish Clemson games this year. I think PJ Hall, who's a really good player, has some of like the worst basketball IQ I've ever seen of a good player ever at any level of basketball. Like, him, the way they would put him back in when he was in foul trouble, and he would just immediately like do something dumb and go and like assault someone. He found out of both the last 2 games, and watching both those games, there were times where I was like, wow, they're letting him get away with stuff there. Like, cause it was a storyline that he was in foul trouble. Yeah. I can't believe he ever doesn't foul out of games. So I think especially against Arizona, I think they're going to get inside. I think they're going to get him in foul trouble. And it's a perfect matchup because they want to get the ball inside to him. Arizona's top 10 in preventing shots at the rim. I think that's just like it's a perfect matchup for Arizona.
Umar Bala feels like a matchup nightmare for PJ Hall.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm on Clemson in this one, but it's a game that I definitely flipped back and forth with throughout the week. I'm just worried that Clemson tries to get into a track meet with Arizona, and if they do that, I think they'll get ran off the floor. But if they can slow it down and play the zone like Washington State did, and Washington State beat them twice this year, and make this into a half-court game, I definitely think Clemson's there. I also took Clemson plus 3.5 in the first half because I think, too, if they try to engage in that track meet style, I think they could be able to hang in the first half, but Arizona kind of just that speed and the endurance that they have from playing that style all year will eventually wear them down. So look for Clemson maybe to keep this one close in the first half, plus 3.5. I think they could definitely win it outright in the first half as well on the money line. But their defense in these first 2 games really impressive, holding New Mexico to 56 points and Baylor to 64 points. Those are 2 high-scoring teams. So just got to get I'm a little bit worried, kind of what you were saying, Mark, where if Arizona does crank it up and make this a transition game, I think that could make it get out of hand. But if they are able to dictate the pace, slow it down, play it in the half court, and play the zone that we've seen them play over the first 2 rounds of the tournament a little bit, I definitely think they can make this a ball game, and wouldn't be surprised if Caleb Love has to go hero ball and kind of shoots him out of the game there in the zone.
I think this game, and I love how we have 3 different angles on it because it's a really nice, refreshing start to the stream instead of all of us agreeing on the first bet. I like the under 152.5 in this game. The way I look at it is it's a 4 p.m. local start. Clemson, Brad Brunell, I just mentioned, is going out of his way to mention the travel. So the legs are going to be heavy with Clemson. And I think Clemson's defensive style and the way in which they kind of have been able to play over the last few weeks, that's the way they're going to try and play. Whether it works, I'm not sure. But even if it doesn't work, I think Clemson either makes this kind of a slog, or they get played out of the game and they only score like 65 points. I don't see a world where Clemson is scoring in the 70s. I think if the game in the 70s or the 80s, Arizona wins this with ease. So I'm looking at the under 152.5. It just feels like situationally, it feels like the best spot to go to in this game. The other early tip off, I think this is where things are going to get a little spicy, and I like it. San Diego State and UConn. The number is now up to 12 on DraftKings Sportsbook. in favor of the defending champion UConn Huskies, who ran two teams out of the gym in Stetson and Northwestern. I'm on the Aztecs, but I want to hear you two. I want to hear your thoughts on the game first before I go into why you should bet San Diego State.
I really don't have much here. I'm not betting this one.
Okay.
I'm staying away. I would lean San Diego State with the points, just because I mean, UConn shot terribly, but I expected them to kind of even run Northwestern off the court even more. I guess the margin of victory probably doesn't tell the whole story there, but I'm staying away from this one. I have bets on all the other three games. I think UConn wins. It feels like it feels like it's going to be a sweat no matter what.
I parlayed. I guess we'll talk about that game later, but I did parlay UConn money line with UNC money line, and that came out to minus 125 on DraftKings. So I do think UConn is going to win the game at the end of the day, but I do think the San Diego State team has what it needs to keep this within the number. When I was going back and doing the research for this game, San Diego State this year 18-4 when they hold their opponents to 70 or less. UConn, you look at their three losses this year. 69-65, 75-60, and 85-66. So if San Diego State is able to kind of dictate that pace, play this game in the 60s, I think they're going to be able to hang around. And the reason why I do think San Diego State does have a chance if this is a tight game is because when you look at UConn and what everyone says about them, it's the blowouts. How many wins do they have this year by 20 or more? And then when you look at that on the other side of the card, how many games do they have this year that came down to the under 4 media timeout and they had to close out a close game? This is a team so experienced in blowouts, and usually by the under 8, they have a double-digit lead in hand. So does this team have what it takes to close out a close game here in the tournament with all the pressure on them? We haven't really seen that much from them this year. So San Diego State gets to that under 8, and you can still get them there at plus money. It's something on the money line that I'm probably going to take a look at the end of the day, just because I think that this UConn team is inexperienced in these close games. So wouldn't be surprised if they go out there and pull off this upset tonight.
Ryan just made me think. I'm deciding. I'm getting in, not on the UConn UNC. That's what made me think about it. I'm gonna go. If you go UConn, Arizona, Marquette over the next 2 days, each on the money line, that goes to plus 106. So that's where I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna just to have something. Even it feels ridiculous to put like a minus 800 in here in a parlay, but hey, it gets me to the plus. Arizona Marquette wouldn't get me there, so why not?
Well, to hell with your parlay. San Diego State is winning this game.
That's fair. That's fair.
So I kept looking at this game over the week, and this is more of a gut thing than to anything, to be honest with you, when it comes to San Diego State. So I think they're the only team in the East region that can beat UConn. I think if UConn wins this game, they're clear to the Final Four. I really do believe this is the hurdle they have to climb. And the reason I get, by the way, real quick, clap it up. I just did a parlay thanks to Ellie De La Cruz. So let's clap it up for opening day. So I love how Luke and Sean are probably going to clip this and be like, what the hell are you doing in the middle of this? So here's the way I look at it. Jaden Ledee was a top 5 player of the opening weekend, right? Mm-hmm. Like, I think we can all agree on that. Nobody watched San Diego State. And this is the case I made to Sean Brace the other day. Nobody watched San Diego State because that UAB game was kind of just stuck in the middle, right? And nobody really paid too much attention to it, even though it got close for a little bit. And then they just steamrolled Yale, and that was the last game of the weekend, and everybody was on a high after Houston, Texas A&M. So everybody is sitting here not thinking much of San Diego State. They're just going to be a pushover for UConn, that they're blowing everybody out. But I think in terms of matchup-wise, there's experience throughout this team that really could have hurt UConn. You look at Illinois and you look at Iowa State. Iowa State's young, and we'll get to that because I think that's a factor in the late game in Boston. But Jaden Ledee, I think, can cause trouble for Klingon down low. Obviously, Klingon's got the size, but I think Ledee has enough skill and maybe can draw him out a little bit where that helps. They have experience all throughout the court. Brian Dutcher, a head coach who has seen a lot of things in his coaching career. You give him extra days to prepare. Boom. The matchup is there. No one, absolutely no one, is expecting San Diego State to win this game, except for me. And I think this is also has to do with the rematch factor. Like, you got to put the revenge in there as well. National championship game. I know teams have changed, but And I don't believe any of the BS Danny Hurley is out here preaching. Like, the draw is the draw. You blew two teams out by a ton of points. The committee's not against you, right? Like, come on, be realistic here. And I think if you're Brian Dutcher, you play that exact same clip about Danny Hurley bitching and moaning about the committee and say, look what these guys, they're entitled at this point. I think that's a perfect rallying cry. I love the Aztecs. I love it even more. I'm actually about to place the bet right now. They're plus 12. They're plus 600 on the money line. Mark it right here. The San Diego State Aztecs are taking down UConn tonight. It's going to be a slog. It's going to be a sweat, but I think they get the job done. Go Aztecs.
Hurley's Beef's guy. I don't know if you can talk about him like that.
I'm going out for this game, and if the Aztecs do win this game tonight, I will be having multiple shots in honor of Dan Hurley losing. I cannot stand him. He needs the slice of humble pie in the worst possible way. Too much, like you said, bitching and complaining, and I'm getting sick of it. So go Aztecs. I have UConn in the bet for kind of the emotional hedge, but Aztecs plus 11. But then, yeah. No,
Hurley's out for blood, Sean Brace says.
He might be out for my blood at this point with all I'm complaining about him, but
I like that you guys hate UConn so much.
I don't hate UConn. I don't hate UConn.
Okay.
I really don't hate him. I just hate the way Hurley talks.
No. Let me get this straight. I don't hate UConn. I'm a Big East purist at heart. I love the Big East. I love like UConn winning the Big East winning for the Big East last year. Like it touched on my heartstrings. But I think the matchup itself, there's nothing against UConn. It just has everything to do with what I think this matchup is.
That.
Yeah.
I thought you had previously said that they were creeping into the unlikable territory.
They are a little bit just because of who their head coach is and they're winning.
I'm not there yet. Like, I don't like Hurley, but he doesn't really bother me yet. Like,
I got to win one more to do that.
Yeah, I think if he won another one and he was still doing the crazy stuff, I think then it would start bothering me a little bit more. But I kind of like it that UConn. I hope that it's not just beef. Like, I hope that there's because I do think that there's starting to be a little bit of they're creeping towards that unlikable factor. And
but you got to win again to be that hateable.
Or at least get there. Like, if they got to the national championship, I think that there would be a little bit of a surge against them. That would
like Duke. The reason why we hate Duke is because Duke's got the titles.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if they were just some like entitled program showing up to the dance and just barking and doing the floor slapping and the JJ Redick and the Wojo and everybody like that, Shane Battier, like there's a reason why we hate you is because you've won. Like UConn, I think is. Like Kemba Walker, Shabazz Napier, like those are sentimental. Those are great moments. But Hurley is the ingredient that makes them unlikable to some. And if they win again, then I think that the heel turn really comes with UConn.
But I think it's good for the sport too.
Absolutely.
You need your villains. Like I love the NFL, but I love it a whole lot more when the Cowboys lose. Like,
right.
You just have to have someone kind of to root against. But I just hate some of the stuff he says, like about the transfers. Your starting backcourt is 2 transfers. Riley Kugel, the Florida transfer, he put out his top 4 teams. UConn's on one of his top 4. Just he needs to just shut his mouth at some point.
Get a little bit of a clue when it comes to the transfer portal. And that goes for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
We're all Aztecs tonight.
We are all Aztecs.
I'm rooting for you guys. No reason not to. No reason. Well, I have my over 7.5 Big East wins ticket that I'm holding on to. I just need 2 more from UConn, Creighton, and Marquette. But if UConn
that could be a little perilous.
Yeah, if UConn lost, it could become that could get into some danger territory. But as of right now,
right,
I think the over under would probably be like 4.5, maybe 5.5 more. Just because Creighton's
UConn's favored to win.
UConn's big time favorite in this game. Creighton is a slight dog to Tennessee. Marquette's big time favored.
I would say at least 3.5.
Yeah. So I'm feeling good about that. And then I've got under 5.5 wins for the remaining SEC teams. So under 5.5 for Tennessee and Bama. I think the only way I lose that is if one gets to the Final Four and one wins the title. I think that's the only way I lose it. But yeah. Those are my 2 favorite
transition teams. To our next game.
Look at you. You're a pro. It's almost like you've been hosting some radio shows as O'Neal Cruz just hit a bomb to left field. How about that? Finally
focus up, Joe.
Look, I got to keep the people informed. It's opening day. It's college basketball, Sweet 16. Everything's involved, and I'm not monetarily attached to the Pirates at all at this point. Bama, North Carolina, -5.5 is -5 now is the spread. It's moved up from 4, like gradually from 4.5. Now it's 5. What do we think of the number itself first and foremost? I know who I'm riding with in this matchup. I've told you guys who my national champion is in the bracket. I have a future on North Carolina. I'm betting North Carolina tonight. I'm also looking at the under because of how North Carolina is going to play this game. But I want your thoughts, guys, on the spread itself and now moving up to 5 at DraftKings Sportsbook.
Yeah, I got a 4 with UNC. I think that was yesterday when I got it. But I just think this is an absolute nightmare matchup for Alabama because UNC has the horses, if they choose to make this the track meet and play in the 90s or the low 100s, whatever they want. But also when you go to the same chagrin, UNC has the ability to defend. I mean, I just don't think their defense has been talked about enough this year, how good it's been, just because when you think North Carolina, usually associated with offense and especially in the transition game. So when I go back to that, they can play that game if they want to, if they choose to. But I do think they're going to try and slow this down to a degree and play defense. And especially when you got a guy like Cormac Ryan against his Alabama team, I think this is a great game for him to have some success in transition as well. But this is a big time win, I think, by North Carolina. I think they win by double digits. This is just the perfect matchup for them, I think, and then just the less than ideal matchup for Alabama.
It's like you listened to my hit yesterday on the Daily Ticket because Cormac Ryan was my guy to watch in the UNC Alabama game as well. I
He's gonna have a ton of open looks.
Yeah, I feel like this is an absolute perfect game for him, and we fall in love with Cormac Ryan and what he can do for UNC, and then we hype up UNC even more and more and more. Mark, Alabama, look, we've sat here and said they can't play like a defense. Now, with that being said, you look at their 2 games against Charleston and Grand Canyon, and you really can't. The game against Grand Canyon wasn't basketball, and the game against Charleston got out of hand. And I don't know how much you can put in them giving up 90-plus points to Charleston because a lot of the Charleston points came in the final 8 minutes of the second half after the game was done and dusted. So what do we make of Alabama's defense, and can it do anything to prevent what UNC wants to do tonight?
No, I don't think so. I'm right there with you. This is a squad ride here with UNC. I got it at -4 as well last night. And now I've had a pretty good gambling tournament in terms of betting sides here. I'm in the green, but I've had an even better takes tournament in terms of the takes I was giving all year on the Tough Cover and on these streams and on the Daily Ticket. I was hard out on all of the extreme offense, no defense teams. I was totally out on Baylor, Florida, FAU, obviously Kentucky. They all go down. Bama's the one left. I mean, the Bama is the only team standing. I mean, besides Illinois, Brayson, Jansen kind of pushed back on that. They said Illinois is kind of like that too. Illinois was pretty good defensively early on in the year and have been so bad as of late. So when I was making those points, I wasn't thinking of Illinois back in January, but they definitely belong on that list as well. But make no mistake, Alabama's here because they played a 12 and a 13. They played Grand Canyon, and I don't think that Grand Canyon struggled offensively because Alabama played great defense. Grand Canyon shot crappy when they won their
Grand Canyon was never a good offensive team, a great offensive team all season.
And that's a game too. If you watched and didn't box score scout, Alabama wasn't playing good defense. Grand Canyon was going down and jacking up the first transition 3 that they could.
Yeah, I mean, 18 for 56 at 32%.
There wasn't exactly an offensive game plan with Grand Canyon in that game.
No. And I mean, it shows. I mean, this is the highest total in the tournament history for the 3rd straight Alabama game. They've topped themselves each game, and they will continue if they continue in the tournament. But I don't think they will because I think they got really lucky with their first 2 matchups. I think they've gotten, if not the worst possible matchup in the field, one of the couple worst potential matchups in the field for them. North Carolina has an elite transition defense, an elite rim and three defense. They allow the fewest fast break points per game of any D1 team. They rank 4th in rim and 3 points per possession allowed. I think it's a nightmare when you're playing Oats basketball to go against that type of defense. So Hubert Davis, also a fun little stat here, 8-0 against the spread in the tournament.
He's a moneymaker. The Tar Heels are also 7-3 against the spread in games of a favorite of 4 or fewer. I guess that expands a little bit now because it's 5. And Bama is 2-6 ATS as an underdog. Shameless plug. You can read all of those fun facts over at Carlson Broad. I put together a list of trends. Shout out Kevin, because I know they threw a retweet out there. My name is Joe Tansey. That's Ryan Coyle. Mark Henry Jr. down on the bottom square. If we're playing Hollywood squares, would you be an X? Would you be an O? Like, what would your choice be?
That's a little before me, Hollywood Squares.
I have no idea what that is.
I'm aware of the reference.
This is the worst.
I'm aware of the reference. I can picture like the screen, what it looks like. I can't tell you anything about it.
Do you know what the Game Show Network was?
Yeah, big weakest link guy.
Okay.
Huge weakest link guy growing up. Who wants to be a millionaire?
That doesn't surprise me with your personality that you're a weakest link guy. So anyway, my
last stat on UNC, 14-0 this year when they score 85 or more. It just doesn't bode well, I think, for Alabama whatsoever.
All of our college basketball coverage throughout March Madness is presented by AAA here at The Gambler. Be ready, get AAA. Again, I'm Tansey, Ryan Coyle, who is much younger than I think my references believe he is, and Mark Henry Jr., who also doesn't get my references. I need like Roy or Sean or Jensen to hop in here and be like, tell me they at least know what Hollywood squares is. I think Richard Burton used to be the center square, but you don't even know who that is, so it doesn't really matter. Way over both of your heads with all these pop culture.
I know Roy Burton. That's the only.
There was one I made in the group chat the other week, and it was a Rock of Love, and you were just like, "What's that?" And then like, do you even know what VH1 is?
Oh, I know that. Yeah, I know.
Tape, right?
It's a tape. Yeah, that's VHS, friend.
Oh God,
close enough, man.
Bret Michaels. I know that. I could. That's my time. 2007. Yeah, I was.
There were some really, really bad reality shows on VH1 for quite some time. All right, back to the basketball. To wrap it up on UNC, I like the under in this game at 174.5. Go ahead, keep betting the overs on Alabama games. I'll bet the under. I think this is when it comes to matchup, this is where the matchup really gets to them, and you need perfection to get to 175 in an NCAA tournament game. You need from the first time out to the last time out. You need points. You can't have a dry spell, and I think this is going to be one where I think UNC slows them down, like you mentioned with the transition defense. I really do think this is a situation that benefits UNC. I'm very much hammering UNC. I'm also taking the under in this game. I think this is where Alabama goes to die. And this is where, like, matchup-wise, and this is a perfect transition into Iowa State, Illinois. This is a matchup-based tournament at this point. And the reason why I think UConn struggles tonight is because of the matchup with San Diego State. The reason why I think Purdue struggles tomorrow is the matchup with Gonzaga. The matchup you run into now with Iowa State and Illinois is fascinating because you always hear contrasting styles, all this BS from people who are breaking down these games. But this is actually contrasting styles. Number one, Illinois in adjusted efficiency on offense, according to KenPom. Iowa State, number one on defense in adjusted efficiency, according to KenPom. Two very distinct, different styles. Illinois wants to go up and down, push the pace. Iowa State has absolutely no problem living in the 60s. I'm on Illinois tonight. I love where Illinois is playing, and I think experience and just little intangibles go a long way in these matchups. I think they have that with Terrence Shannon Jr. Marcus Domask has been playing a lot better. I think even a guy like Coleman Hawkins tonight, I'm not saying he's going to go for like 20, but makes a few key baskets here and there in a game where Iowa State, look, Damon Lipsey's awesome. He's also young. Yeah, there is an experience gap between Iowa State and Illinois. I think Iowa State has a ceiling. I don't know if that ceiling is remotely close to Illinois' ceiling when it comes to offense. I'm on the Illini. I love them as an underdog. Now it's down to a 1-point spread, basically a pick 'em. But I love Illinois in this spot.
I'll chime back because I think Beef's alongside with you, but I'm on the other side. I'm with the Cyclones. And I've kind of been the high guy on these streams on Iowa State all year, I feel like. And you mentioned that, yeah, the ceiling for Iowa State's offense is nowhere near the ceiling for Illinois' offense. My retort to that was I think that Iowa State's ceiling as an offense is higher than Illinois' ceiling currently as a defense.
That's fair.
So I think all the focus is obviously going to go on Iowa State's defense versus Illinois offense. And that's a fun potential matchup. I know Mark Titus was saying they shouldn't even let Iowa State play defense. They should give them like 1.4 points per stop. It should just be like offense versus defense for 40 minutes. That would be fun. But I actually think the advantage here comes with Iowa State's offense versus Illinois' defense. I'm more confident in Iowa State's offense than I am in Illinois' defense because Iowa State's bumped their KenPom offensive rating up like 30 spots over the last couple of weeks offensively. Their offense, I just think they're being underrated when it comes to guard play. I think that they have this knack as a team, and I've said this all year about them. They get in these games that they control the tempo. They kind of control, they're up 4 to 10 points for a majority of the game. And every time that other team makes that run that gets it close, either Gilbert or Lipsy or Jones, like one of those guys steps up and, gets hot real quick and gets back-to-back buckets or gets a turnover. And it just feels like Iowa State's able to keep a team at an arm's length better than most college teams. Because most college teams, I mean, you see it. Like even with a lot of these teams, they've let bad teams back in the game in this tournament, and they end up, coming out on top. But, you saw it with Dayton and Arizona. Arizona had that game in hand, and I think Arizona's really good. But, they let that game get away. Iowa State has a unique ability, I think. And I think it's because they have those three guards. They can kind of keep you at an arm's length. And I think that's what's going to happen here. I think they win this game like 72-68, 72-66, and it's kind of close the whole way. We're waiting for that Illinois run, and then when we get it, I think Iowa State will kind of answer with one of their own.
I'll counter your counter and say if it's a close game, there's only one guy I trust making the game-winning shot, and that's Terrence Shannon. And that's kind of where I lie. If this is going to be a close game like everybody thinks, I'm going to pick the team with the best player on the floor.
Real quick, I can't lie. Some of those nightmares of earlier Illinois games this season at the end of games and some of those late game meltdowns, I can't lie and say that those aren't in my head. And it's crazy because they're the number one offense. It's hard for me to be too critical at all. There's just 3 or 4 of those games that I have permanently in my head. I know one with Michigan State. And some of those games, I know that they've been really, really good on offense. I just think at the end of games, I'll take Iowa State's defense over that offense, even if you wanted to flip it on that way.
I know that it's been thrown out all week how it's the number one offense versus the number one defense, but I just think that is like so cool, especially this late in the season. Like, how often in sports, just in general, do you have the number one offense versus number one defense square off? So that's a pretty awesome thing just to see, especially in a Sweet 16 game. There's no secret behind it that Iowa State wants to keep this one lower scoring and make this more of a rock fight. 6 of their 7 losses this year, they allowed 70 or more points. So I think they're really looking to play this game in the 60s. Illinois, though, 33 of their 36 games, they've scored 70 or more. So can Iowa State dictate that tempo and make it a half-court game? If they are able to do that, I think the playmakers on the Illinois offense are still good enough to kind of overcome that if they don't make this a complete transition game. And it does have to be played in the half court. When you look at great defensive teams, the one, I think, way to beat them is to have a great individual playmaker. And Illinois has that with Terrence Shannon, because when push comes to shove, you can give him the ball and say, go make a play. I think that's why, too, like UConn might not be the best, or Iowa State might give UConn a game if those two were to match up, because when you look at UConn, Tristan Newton and Cam Spencer, I think they're more system players, not go get a bucket type guy. When you look at Terrence Shannon Jr., you can just give him the ball and say, go to work. So if you get into the half court and you're running down the shot clock, he's a guy that can still go get you a bucket. And I think that's how you beat these really great defenses that play in the half court. So I am going to go with the Illini here. The slower the game, the more it favors Iowa State. But I think Illinois, at the end of the day, that offense trumps the great defense.
Here's my hot take on this game. The winner of this game, if they play UConn, gets run out of the gym on Saturday. because of how tough and physical this game is going to be. I think it's going to be much tougher. Like if UConn advances, there might be a shot it gets ugly. I still don't believe that, but I think because Illinois Iowa State is going to be such a battle, I think the winner of this game, if they play UConn, is screwed. Now, with that being said, I think if we get San Diego State versus Iowa State, it's going to be the world's most boring Elite Eight game because it's going to be played in the 50s, and God knows what the over-under on that game is going to be set at. But I think San Diego State, Illinois actually makes a pretty intriguing stylistic matchup as well. Kind of goes to the same principles of what we're talking about here. So I just throwing things out there and just kind of looking how these four teams match up against each other. I think the reason why, to circle back to San Diego State, is I think they've just got the perfect combination of everything intangible wise, where they have our experience, the coaching. I think everything kind of comes together where they have a much better shot to beat UConn than Illinois or Iowa State does.
Yeah, I've kind of been pretty steadfast from the beginning that I don't think anyone's beaten UConn in that region, especially in Boston.
Which is, look, it's fair. Look at what they've done all season long.
Yeah, I think they're going to get through that. I've kind of been of the mindset, and everyone complained about their draw in that bracket, and I think me and Tansey and I'm
tired of hearing about the draw.
We were totally in agreement. I think Beef's right there with us. Like, people were like, "Oh, it's Iowa State and Illinois." It's like, well, they can only play one of those, and it's like San Diego State and Auburn. It's like, well, they can only play one of those. Like, it's not like, and even still, I've been kind of from the beginning saying, if you're going to beat UConn, and we've seen some teams beat UConn, at least as of late, like Creighton, I think you've got to be a team. Like, they always put that stat out where it's like you have to be top 18 in offense and top 25 in defense to win the title. I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. It seems fair, but I think you need that to beat UConn at this point in the season. I think you need to be able to be so good on both ends and to be able to play a perfect game nearly on both ends. And the teams that can do that are the teams that have those top 20 units in both. Like in Arizona, if it's a Final Four matchup in Phoenix, like a Creighton who has seen them already and ran them out of the building once. Like, those are the type of teams like that I could see kind of. I mean, obviously the obvious ones like a Houston or some teams like that too. But I just Iowa State probably not good enough on offense, even though I think they're better than given credit for a lot. Illinois not good enough on defense, and I don't think San Diego State's got a second guy that'll step up for Leday. That's kind of my biggest thing. They only have one guy in double figures who averages double figures, and he averages 22 a game in Leday. He's amazing. I think he's one of the very best players in the country, and I think it's a shame how little he's talked about.
I agree.
I talked about it with you guys after the first game. It was the best game I've seen a single player play at the tournament, or the most impressive. So
he single-handedly eliminated all of UAB's front court players. All right, let's wrap things up. Let's give a recap of our cards. Beef, what are you rolling with tonight?
1 second. I'm on UNC -4, San Diego State +11, UConn, UNC moneyline parlay, and then Clemson +7.5, Clemson +3.5 in the first half, and then Illinois +100 moneyline.
Mark, what are you cooking up tonight?
I am on Arizona -7. I am on UNC -4. That's my favorite bet of the night. And then I'm on Iowa State -1.5. Also put in that UConn Arizona Marquette money line parlay. And hey, I always have to be the one to say it. Milwaukee Bucks team total over 112.5. There's NBA being played too.
I mean, look, I just interjected with my MLB. That's whatever the Diamondbacks run line is. Bet that, because they always hit Kyler Freeland well. So there you go. I'll interject. My card tonight, I'm on the Clemson Arizona under at 152.5. I'm on UNC -5 and the under 174.5 in that game. Illinois money line, and the big one of the night, the San Diego State Aztecs. We are all Aztecs. I am taking them at +11.5 and straight out on the money line. Let's go Aztecs. If this is wrong, this clip just vaporizes into the internet and nobody cares about it. But I love San Diego State in this matchup. For Ryan Coyle, Mark Henry Jr., I am Joe Tansey. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Once again, our coverage here at The Gambler for all of March is presented by AAA. Be ready, get AAA. We'll be back here same time tomorrow night to break down the remaining 4 Sweet 16 matchups. Have a good night, everyone, and best of luck on your bets.